Okay, I'll now take the sident for the Clyde Valley Learning Development Joint Committee by roll call. Councillor Colin Merrick is present. Councillor Annette Christie. She's actually just trying to join the meeting just now. Hi, Councillor Christie, have you joined us?
Yes, sorry, I'm here.
Hi, I'm just doing the sident, thank you. And the following members are all also present. Councillors Martin Brennan, Angela Campbell, Andy Steele and Katie Loudon. I've also taken a note of the officers that are present and the representatives from Audit Scotland. I'll now pass you back to the convener for today's business. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Stuart. Excuse me. Okay, first of all, does anyone have any declaration of interest on item 1? No, none that I can see. Okay, thank you very much. Second item, we have the minutes of the previous meeting, page 5 to 8. This was the meeting that was held on the 13th of September, submitted for approval as an accurate record. Does anyone have any comments or questions on the minutes? None that I can see. Happy to accept. Great, thank you. First item for monitoring is item 3. Excuse me, this is revenue budget monitoring 2021 to 2022, and you'll find it on page 9 of your pack. And Amanda is going to take us through this. Good morning, Amanda. Sorry, good afternoon, Amanda. It's just going.
Sunshine's just blinding, you know. Thank you, Chair. This is just the regular revenue budget monitoring report that comes to the Joint Committee. It's the second report of the year and covers the period 1st of April up to the 28th of January 22. At the period, we're showing a break-even position. It's section 5.2 of the report, just to point out that at the meeting on the 13th of September, the Joint Committee approved the drawdown of some of the funds that have been carried forward from previous years to be used to subsidise the costs of the learning management system with Brightwave going forward. Those costs are in the process of going through just now. The contracts have all been kind of signed off. So when the report comes to committee on the annual accounts in June, we'll be able to give an update of how much money we've actually had to draw down, because depending on the underspend in the year, we might not have to draw down the full amount that the Joint Committee approved. And the Joint Committee just asked to approve or to note the report, please.
Great, thank you very much, Amanda. Does anyone have any comments or questions on this report? Excuse me. No, none that I can see. We're happy to approve.
Great.
Great, thank you very much. We've got an item for decision at item 4, everyone. This is update on membership and funding for 2022-2023, and it begins on page 13. I'm really sorry, my throat has started to get sore. And it's Jerry that's going to take us through this. Hi, Jerry.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. This paper is for decision by the committee to recommend the continued membership and funding for the next financial year 22-23, and it is, of course, the lifeblood of our project that we have a membership structure and that the members contribute financially to the membership according to a tiered structure. The background is, of course, that we set the tiered structure in June 2018, agreed by this committee, and that we agreed a number of parameters as the level that was required to continue to be viable. These are notably a minimum level of funding of £61,000. That's including audit fees, so that's stated there in the background page as paragraphs under paragraphs 3.2, and also a full member quota of 5 full member councils. Those are the two key factors that we need to set in play for each position each year to continue to be viable. In section 4 of this report, we outline the current position, and the situation is that we have met both of those criteria as highlighted in section 4.2. We have 6 full member councils and 9 current participating member councils. That was at the position when this paper was completed on 20th of January of this year. The confirmed the income that then brings to the project is £78,000, which meets our requirement and carries forward £17,000 for possible use by the project in terms of project activity. The update position is that the one other council had to make a decision, Dumfries and Galloway Council, and has opted to not continue to stay with membership for this year. That decision was only communicated to me on Friday of the last week, and the decision is based on the fact that they have decided to withdraw from the learning management platform contract. That was the primary area of interest for Dumfries Galloway Council to retain their membership, and so whilst that is the basis of the decision, they decided not to renew the membership. We have actually communicated with them and made it very clear that should they wish to be involved in any other aspects of the project's work, that we'd be happy to discuss things with them again, and they could return to the membership at a future point, and they've acknowledged that this position. In terms of where we actually take the project forward, then the decision to the £17,000 which will be contributed into the fund for the project, the decision on how that is used will be shared between the steering group and the social care group as ever, and that should there be a specific request for further use of the funds, that will be approved before this committee following those recommendations. So in conclusion, although we have been able to achieve our requirements, it's pretty clear that we've still got a good demand for the project to take place, that people still see the benefits in the project's activities. Our feedback suggests that the main drivers for bringing people into the project and continuing to see those benefits are based on social care, the Promoting Positive Behaviour programme, and through the e-learning activities and procurement activities associated with that. So those are the two critical programmes that have brought people back to the project year after year, but we continue to look out for other opportunities where we can continue to add value across the board. So I can like to ask the committee to consider the recommendations in this paper in section 2, that it's noted that the membership and funding remains viable, that the previous agreed categories of membership fees are, as set out in the paper, are noted for in set paragraph 3.3, that we've achieved the minimum level of funding and covered audit fees, and we've achieved the minimum number of level and exceeded that for full member councils. The remaining level of expenditure is therefore £17,000 to be carried forward for project use, and ask the committee to approve those recommendations, please. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Jerry. Does anyone have any comments or questions on this report for Jerry? And that I can see just now. Okay, thank you very much for that, Jerry. It sounds very positive. Things are still moving in a good direction there, and that we're still hitting the funding targets and so on. It's good to see that continued membership. This is an item for decision, everyone. So I'm going to propose that we accept the recommendations at paragraph 2 on page 13. Could I have a seconder for that, please?
I'll be second, Chair.
Great, thank you. Okay, if we're all happy to accept, move on to the next item. Great, thank you very much. Okay, next item, excuse me, is item 5 in your pack, everyone, which begins on page 19. And this is annual audit, the Joint Forum Annual Audit Plan 2021 to 2022. And can I welcome Andrew and Tayaba, who are from Audit Scotland today, who are joining us this afternoon. So they're going to go through the report for us. This is another report for noting. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, convener. And good afternoon, everyone. So our plan serves two purposes. Firstly, it provides you with details of our proposed audit work as part of the 2021-22 audit, together with our timescales for completing the work. Secondly, the plan discharges our responsibilities under the accounting standard to make you as members aware of various areas such as our materiality levels for the audit, the confirmation of our independence, as well as our quality control arrangements. So I don't intend to go through the plan in too much detail, but I would like to note the following areas within it. On page 21 of your papers pack, at paragraph 1, I would like to highlight that in addition to providing an opinion on the financial statements, our audit opinion also covers other areas of the annual accounts, such as the management commentary and the governance statements. On page 23, Exhibit 1, we have detailed the materiality levels for our audit of the Joint Committee. These will be revisited upon receipt of the unaudited annual accounts later this year. On page 24 in Exhibit 2, we have outlined significant risks that we have identified as part of our 2021-22 risk assessment. The risk noted is considered a generic risk and relates to all public and private sector bodies, and it is driven by the accounting standards, and as such we have a duty to consider it as a risk for the Joint Committee. In the far right-hand column of the table, we've outlined the work that we intend to undertake this year to address this particular risk. Later on in the year, we'll be reporting back to the committee on this particular risk. The Code of Audit Practice also requires auditors to consider the wider scope of public audit, with our work not just confined to the financial statements. So on page 26 of the papers pack, we have noted that our risk assessment didn't identify any wider dimension audit risks. This, combined with the limited number of transactions during the year, means we'll be focusing our wider code work on the financial sustainability and governance arrangements in place at the Joint Committee. Our findings and judgments from this wider code work will also be reported within our annual audit report. The last point to mention there is on page 28 in Exhibit 4. We have set out the deadline that will allow us to sign off the annual accounts by the statutory deadline of the 31st of October. We recognise that the committee dates for after the elections in May are still to be determined, but from discussion with management, we are working to a similar audit timetable to last year. As we are in regular communication with management throughout the year, any of these changes to our position will be reported at the earliest opportunity. So I think this covers the main points within our annual audit plan, but I'd be happy to clarify on anything or answer any of the questions that anyone may have. Thanks, Convener.
Great, thank you very much, Tayaba, for going through that. Does anyone have any comments or questions on the annual audit plan just now? No, none that I can see. Okay, are we happy to accept the report as is just now? Yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you very much for that. Thanks, everybody. Moving on to the next item in our pack then is item 6, and this is on a strategic review of the Promoting Positive Behaviour programme. Difficult to say. And Jerry's going to go through this for us. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The committee will be aware that we spend a significant amount of our activity in managing the Promoting Positive Behaviour programme, which is one of our key programmes and has been highly successful and praised by the councils involved in using the programme. But looking at the background of this, though, the programme has now been up and running for over 8 years, and the initial work to start the development of the programme actually started some 10 years ago. So whilst the programme is now embedded in 8 of the original councils involved in the Clyde Valley Group, and all 8 are using the programme across all aspects of the social care and social work provision, there has been a number of suggestions that the time may now be right to look at the appropriateness of the programme relative to current thinking in terms of social work and social care. And one of the main drivers for that thinking is whilst we have, as I mentioned in 3.3 here, whilst we have had an independent evaluation of the programme and conclusions that were reported to this committee at that time, that the programme continues to offer the objectives that we set out to achieve, it's become clear from the discussions with the social care group that a number of councils have changed their policies in relation to the physical intervention aspects of the programme, not just with regard to PPB, but in general their approach to physical interventions, particularly in the context of children's care. And therefore, some councils have chosen that not to use physical interventions as a matter of policy in any circumstances. So this has led us to the belief that it's time to review PPB to see whether or not there's any conflict between the principles of the programme, which are about behaviours associated with behaviour that challenges, and using the physical interventions as a position of last resort, to try and establish that there is no conflict between the policies adopted by the councils and that PPB is still appropriate to use in those circumstances. With that in mind, a proposal was put to the Strategic Governance Group for the programme, and under Section 5, this sets out the methodology that the review was proposed to run by. And we have proposed a timetable to review this programme and report on it over the next the remaining months of the year 2022. So the chair of the Strategic Governance Group has written out to chief social work officers and senior managers across the board of the councils involved and asked for nominations to be involved in this review group. The group will be convened in March of this year and a chair appointed, and we've already had some nominations for that. Scoping work will be carried out into the timetable cited in 5.3 there. So in May, the scoping work will be completed. Perhaps we'll break into separate groupings to do the development work and make the recommendations for proposals and changes perhaps to the group in the context of Council's policy in this area. And that is intended that will be reported back on by December of 2022. It's really important that we continue to have representation from all the stakeholders involved in the programme, both in terms of the councils who use the programme and the different areas where the programme is used. So we were looking for examples from children's services, learning disability, older people and older elderly people's care services, and potentially also in education, where in some areas the PPB programme is also used in a special need environment for children. We're also looking to involve expertise from out with the councils, where perhaps there is either university or academic input to current thinking in this area to ensure that we still continue to have a relevant and appropriate programme, and also to ensure that the language and terminology is also appropriate and consistent with the council's policies in this area. So that's the proposal. It's been approved by the Joint Committee, from the Strategic Governance Group for PPB, and I'd ask this committee to note that the activities that have been recommended for that group under Section 2, that the report, a full review of the PPB programme is being undertaken. The core group will take this forward for completion in 2022. That the high-level support for this review has been secured through Chief Social Work Officers and Chief Officers of the Clyde Valley Councils, and that the core group will provide an update to the Strategic Governance Group at its next meeting and as requested by this committee in future meetings as well. And the committee is asked to note this progress forward with this programme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Does anybody have any comments or questions for Jerry? Questions about the recommendations at 2? Jill Batty. Hi, Jill.
Hi, thanks, Councillor Loudon. I just wanted to comment that PPB has been with us for a while. It's a sensitive subject and it deals with a group who are often troubled. And I think for the staff who are involved in that area, it's really important that PPB is reviewed regularly and has got the highest standards of governance to make sure that everybody who is involved in that is protected. And for that reason, I kind of welcome what Jerry's proposing.
Thanks very much for that, Jill. Yep, absolutely. I agree with those comments. If there's nothing further, I'd be happy to accept the recommendations at 2. And okay, that will go nicely and lead nicely into our next paper, which Jerry's also going to present as well as agenda item 7, which is on page 37 on your pack. And this is on something quite specific in the Promoting Positive Behaviour programme now, is about physical intervention. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Chair. I think to perhaps put this in context, with the previous paper, The review which has just been discussed is looking at the overall relevance and appropriateness for the programme as it's to be taken forward within our councils. But an ongoing piece of work is to continue to pay close attention to the risk assessment associated with the physical intervention aspect of the programme. So we had undertaken some years ago, as the background to this paper sets out, that we needed an independent review of the physical interventions with some validation and risk assessment from an expert point of view. And before the programme came into being, we undertook this for the first time using Robert Gordon University as recognised experts in this area. Some 5 years later, we returned to Robert Gordon's to do a refreshed version of that review, and the committee agreed at that stage that we would continue to try and do that in a cycle of every 2 years. That was a situation which obviously was compromised in 2020 by the impact of the pandemic, and at the time people weren't in a position to carry out that review, so that we finally got round to doing that in the 18th of November of 2021. So this is part of a cycle of two yearly risk assessments that we agreed to undertake, regardless of what the current review is looking at for the overall programme. Another significant influence on why we went forward with this approach is outlined in section 4 of this report. And I think it highlights, once again, to echo Jill's words there about the importance of governance in this situation. The programme has been highly successful, but is working in a very difficult environment where quite often it's an unpredictable situation for both staff and for service users. And whilst it makes a significant contribution to the safety of the environment, it's actually still something which is an occupational reality that violent incidents can still occur. During the period of the last year or so, a significant violent incident did take place in one of the children's houses located within the Clyde Valley Councils. And a major investigation took place involving a number of different parties, external and internal. One of these investigations was carried out by the Health and Safety Executive. 4.4 of the paper that no criticism was apportioned to the content or practice of the PPB programme, which I think is actually very encouraging for us, that we still have that external view that this is the robust programme. However, the specific circumstances gave rise to a recommendation from HSE, which is a fairly unusual occurrence, that an additional physical intervention should be considered and developed and then introduced to the programme. Now, as a governance body, we were duty bound to act on that, and although some councils had expressed their reticence to be involved in that position because of the potential risks associated with working with young people in this circumstance. Nonetheless, in 4.5, the specific recommendation was that a 3-person safe hold should be developed and then introduced to the main suite of interventions within the programme. So for that reason, that was developed as a matter of priority and included within the aspect of the review carried out by Robert Gordon's Institute. University, beg your pardon. And section 5 outlines the report feedback, which we received in draft form at the time of writing of this report. As in previous years, we have a detailed report based on biomechanical analysis of the moves involving the trainers who demonstrate and have these moves filmed. Risk assessments are then carried out by the physiotherapy staff, and a report is provided to us based on every one of the individual moves in both children's and adult services, and also for the new move which was introduced for the first time. The feedback we received then categorises it, as it states in 5.4, against the relative risk of whether it's low, high or medium risk to both service users and to the trainers. And where there's anything that's categorised as anything other than low, there's specific advice which we can then pass on to the trainers when carrying out the training to people, so that how they can reduce that risk, or areas to be careful about when working with those physical interventions. In section 6, there's a specific reference to the new feedback for the new hold, and that this was actually analysed in more detail because it's the first time through. The recommendation was made then that this should now be introduced to the training. I think very worth mentioning here, though, under 6.3 in this report, it should also be noted that this is one of the interventions which is being taught as a possible option for the councils to use. However, there is no obligation for councils to use this new move. It will be a decision taken in every circumstance based on risk assessment at the time and in conjunction with the care plans for the individual service user. It's therefore a decision for local governance to decide whether or not each council would adopt this move. But it's there anyway, and it's something that we've ensured that we've got ourselves covered in terms of the recommendations from the executive. So I think that this actually just continues to demonstrate that the requirement for risk assessment is ever more important, that local governance continues to monitor how we use the programme and that we use it appropriately, that the use of physical intervention is a position of last resort, and that any recommendations coming out of the ongoing review will take on board also Robert Gordon's recommendations on a regular basis. So the committee is asked to note the recommendations in section 2, that the robust and thorough quality assurance and risk assessment has been carried out as per our timetable, with Robert Gordon's University taking that role, that the outcomes are reported in the report from Robert Gordon's are then taken on board and introduced into the training sessions involving the programme, and that the new programme, the new intervention, has also been analysed and will now be put together into the main body of interventions available across the board. So thank you, Chair. That's a paper on the review of physical interventions.
Thank you very much, Jerry, for that really detailed report. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Jerry just now? Oh, and I can see, are we happy to accept the recommendations at 2 to note the report? Yeah, great. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, item 8 then. I don't have any urgent business, but just first of all, a quick thank you to everybody for your attendance over the past session. This is obviously the last meeting of this council session, so thank you for your attendance and your input. After the elections, the clerk will be writing out to officers in the various councils to confirm what the meeting arrangements will be for the year going forward after that. And councillors, if you're standing again, then good luck and possibly see you on the other side. This is the interesting bit, isn't it? Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Loudon.
Maybe not.